For Your Ears Only for the week of December 8th, I'm David Alpern.
I'm Catherine Herzog.
The time for the healing of the wounds has come. The moment to bridge the chasms that divide us has come. The time to build is upon us.
Fellow South Africans, our beloved Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela, the founding president of our democratic nation, has departed. He passed on peacefully in the company of his family around 2050 on the 5th of December 2013.
Even before his inaugural address as the first democratically elected and black president of South Africa on May 10, 1994, even before his release from 27 years in prison, Nelson Mandela was the leader of his nation in a moral and even a political sense. A jailed Mandela secretly negotiated with government officials to exploit the pressure of increasing international sanctions and finally end their brutal apartheid regime. Once in office, though still considered a terrorist by the U.S. government, Mandela lived out the peaceful creed he had developed behind bars by forswearing racial revenge and relying on a truth and justice process to bring the country closure.
Mandela's death last week at age 95, as announced by current President Jacob Zuma after a long, sad physical decline, led predictably both to heartfelt grief, but also the kind of celebratory street song and dance that the Nobel Peace Prize winner himself so loved. To talk more about Mandela's life and legacy, for your ears only, on the line now is prize-winning Boston Globe columnist Derrick Jackson. Welcome. You personally observed Mandela's approach to past grievances when he came to Harvard in 1998 for an honorary degree, itself unusual in that it did not come at a commencement. Talk about that occasion.
Yeah, it was an amazing day. Only two other individuals had ever been given an honorary doctorate outside of commencement at Harvard, and that was George Washington and Winston Churchill. And the amazing thing from my perspective was that, Harvard, there were many, many people at Harvard, Cambridge, Boston, who participated in the anti-apartheid movement, but Harvard itself had sat on the sidelines and kept investing in the apartheid regime. And so it was very interesting to see how Mandela would have dealt with that. And instead of rubbing Harvard's nose into its own history, he was as magnanimous about that as anything else after his release. And in fact, he said, quote, "It holds great symbolic significance to the mind and to the future memory of this great American institution. The name of an African is now added to those two illustrious leaders of the Western world." And the crowd of 25,000 people exploded in applause.
Mandela began his path to power as a lawyer, then a political activist, then a leader of violent protest when apartheid proved unyielding. What do we know about how, in painful and demeaning prison conditions, he came back to see nonviolence as the better form of struggle?
Well, I think, obviously when he was sentenced in in his trial, he said freedom was a cause for which he was prepared to die. But obviously in prison, particularly as I think he sensed that the global anti-apartheid movement was moving the South African government inexorably toward recognizing that its brutality could not exist forever. He is well known that he began negotiating with the government. But I think what is often forgotten in this, a lot of the praise of his forgiveness and that sort of thing is that, he was offered many chances to leave prison, but under conditions that he go back to his a home Bantustan, that he rejects the violence, he rejects the ANC's positions, and he never, ever once bent or broke on that. And I think what that allowed him, when he came out of prison, that allowed him to really get control of the country, retain moral authority for his presidency, and instantly put South Africa on the map as a very special place.
Mandela the man has become iconic worldwide for his vision, patience, even-handed persistence. But to the degree that South Africa has been ever more mired in social and economic problems since he left office, what does it say about his political legacy?
I think we need to step back, first of all. South Africa is still less than a quarter century into freedom. Let's go back to the United States of America. Not to give South Africa any excuses for what it could or should be doing, but let's remember that, the country had a horrible civil war, 85 or so years after its, the declaration, after its independence. So, for South Africa, I've been there twice in recent years. Yes, it is a country of horrific disparities. It's a country that's got a long way to go. And yet, the beauty of the country, the progress that it has made, I would dare say the progress it has made you could probably argue in lots of ways is even more progressive than where the United States was, particularly on social issues, only 20 years or so after its independence.
Certainly, though, Mandela's legacy does not extend to more peaceful settlement of differences in other parts of Africa.
No, it unfortunately does not. And there's clearly legacies of colonialism that haunt the continent. And there's also got to be some really new, fresh accounting by the next generation of Africans and African leaders as to, what do they want for their economies, for their social structures, it's going to be a tough row, and it's going to happen. Unfortunately, it's going to have to take leadership as close to a Mandela as possible.
I'm almost hesitant to ask this, but to the degree that Mandela saw his earlier turn to violence as the necessary precursor to a later politics of peace, do you have any fear that his story may also inspire the growing universe of jihadi terrorists who, like Madiba, have deep faith in their cause, persistence, and a willingness to die for it?
Well, if people do take that track, they're warping what Mandela stood for. Mandela was representing a cause, a very clear cause against a very clear oppression, a very clear injustice, and a very clear morality about it.
Derrick Jackson is a prize-winning columnist at the Boston Globe.
Street songs from Mandela in South Africa. Now this quote from the news: history has taught us the worst may happen. History has taught us the Security Council needs to act. That was Gerard Auro, French ambassador to the United Nations, on the need for escalated intervention in the Central African Republic after as many as 100 people died in the capital city of Bangui in renewed fighting between Muslim rebels who seized control early this year and opposing forces.
Next, economic inequality from Pope to President, for your ears only.